Ethan Calder wiped the sweat from his brow and exhaled, staring out at the barren landscape of Orion Prime. It had been a long day surveying the mineral deposits scattered across this forsaken planet. The twin suns were beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a red-orange glow across the rocky terrain. His crew had already packed up for the night, and the camp was now quiet except for the occasional gust of wind howling through the canyon. Ethan's body ached, and all he wanted was to rest. He slung his gear over his shoulder and made his way back to the main camp. As the lead geologist on the mission, it was his responsibility to ensure the mining operation went smoothly. It was a good job, stable pay, but it came with isolation. Orion Prime was a long way from home, if anyone still called Earth home. Ethan reached the main tent, stepping through the entrance, the artificial lights flickering overhead. He dropped his equipment on the table and poured himself a drink, letting out a deep sigh as he sank into a chair. The others were already asleep, their tents lined up neatly outside the main structure. He was alone, as usual, with only the distant stars and the hum of the camp generator keeping him company. He downed his drink, staring at the stars beyond the canvas roof. As a child, he'd always been fascinated by space, the infinite possibilities, the uncharted worlds, and the mysteries that lay hidden among the stars. But after years of work on various barren planets, that wonder had started to fade, replaced by routine and the grinding reality of survival. Just as Ethan was about to call it a night, a flash of light caught his eye. At first, he thought it might have been the generator flickering again, but this light was outside, near the ridge where they had set up the survey drones. The light was bright, too bright to be a malfunction. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his flashlight and exited the tent, moving quickly toward the ridge. The wind whipped through the canyon as he climbed the rocky path, the light growing stronger with each step. When he reached the top, Ethan stopped in his tracks, breath catching in his throat. Hovering just beyond the ridge, a sleek, black ship was descending silently. Its surface shimmered in the dim light, reflecting the twin suns like liquid metal. This was no mining transport, no cargo vessel, it was something else entirely. Before he could react, a section of the ship opened with a soft hiss, and a figure stepped out. Tall, with skin that gleamed like polished onyx and eyes that glowed a faint blue, the being moved with an eerie grace. Its presence was commanding, as if the very air around it bent to its will. Ethan stood frozen, unsure whether to run or approach. But his curiosity got the better of him. He took a tentative step forward, raising his flashlight. Who are you?" Ethan called out, his voice shaky. The figure turned its gaze toward him, and for a moment, there was only silence. Then, it spoke, not with words, but through a strange resonance that echoed in Ethan's mind. "We seek your knowledge, human," the voice said, each word vibrating deep within his bones. "Your world is but a small piece of the greater cosmos, and you possess something we need." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I'm just a geologist." "You hold the key to something far beyond your understanding," the being continued, stepping closer. "Your mind is attuned to the frequencies of this planet, to the energies that flow beneath its surface. We need your help to harness it." Ethan blinked, his confusion deepening. "Energy? You mean the mineral deposits?" The being nodded slowly. "Yes, but it is not just the minerals. There is a force beneath this land, a power that has been dormant for millennia. You have the knowledge to awaken it." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. His first instinct was to refuse, to turn and run back to the safety of the camp. But something about the being's presence, its calm yet urgent manner, made him pause. He had spent his life exploring the unknown, pushing boundaries, and discovering things no one else had seen. Could this be another discovery? Something even more significant than he had ever imagined? I don't know if I can help you," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You will," the being replied. "You were chosen for this." Before Ethan could protest further, the being extended its hand. A pulse of energy shot through the air, and Ethan's vision blurred. The world around him began to shift, and in an instant, he was no longer standing on the ridge. Instead, he found himself in a vast, subterranean chamber deep beneath the planet's surface. The walls shimmered with ancient symbols, glowing faintly as if they were alive. The air was thick with an energy that made Ethan's skin tingle. He turned to the being, who now stood beside him. "What is this place?" "This is where it begins," the being said, its voice a soft echo. "The heart of Orion Prime. The source of the power we seek to awaken." Ethan looked around, his mind racing. The chamber was unlike anything he had ever seen, a blend of ancient architecture and advanced technology. In the center, a large crystal pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, like the beating of a heart. "You must help us activate it," the being said. "Only then will we be able to restore balance to the cosmos." Ethan stared at the crystal, his thoughts spinning. This was it, the moment that would define his entire life. Everything he had learned, every skill he had honed, had led him to this point. The choice was his. With a deep breath, Ethan stepped forward, placing his hand on the crystal. A surge of energy coursed through him, and in that moment, he knew there was no turning back. Ethan could feel the power surging through him, the crystal's energy connecting with something deep inside him. He had always known there was more to this planet than its surface, but now he understood. The force beneath the ground was alive, ancient and powerful, waiting to be tapped. The being beside him watched in silence, its glowing eyes never leaving Ethan as he worked. He could sense the weight of its expectations, the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. Slowly, Ethan began to manipulate the energy, guiding it through the ancient conduits embedded in the walls. It was a delicate process, one that required precision and focus. The wrong move could destabilize the entire system. Hours seemed to pass as Ethan worked, his hands trembling slightly as he fine-tuned the flow of energy. Sweat dripped down his face, his body aching from the strain, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. This was his purpose, his destiny. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the crystal's light stabilized. The rhythmic pulse became steady, and the energy flow smoothed out. The entire chamber seemed to hum with life, as if the planet itself was awakening. Ethan stepped back, panting, as the being approached him. "You have done well, human," it said, its voice a soft hum in Ethan's mind. "The balance has been restored, thanks to you." Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow, nodding slowly. "What happens now?" The being's gaze shifted toward the crystal. "Now, we will leave. Our mission is complete, and the cosmos will be safe once more. But for you, human, this is only the beginning. You have unlocked a power that will change your life forever." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "You are now connected to the energy of this planet," the being explained. "It will flow through you, granting you abilities beyond your understanding. You will see the world differently, feel its rhythms, its patterns. You are one with the cosmos now." Ethan stared at the being, trying to comprehend what it was saying. Abilities? Powers? He had come to this planet as a geologist, a scientist, not a hero. But now, it seemed, his life was about to take a very different path. As the being turned to leave, Ethan called out. "Wait! What am I supposed to do with this power?" The being paused, turning back to him. "That is for you to decide, human. The cosmos is vast, and you are but a small part of it. But with this power, you have the potential to change the course of history. Use it wisely." Before Ethan could respond, the being vanished, dissolving into a cloud of energy that disappeared into the walls of the chamber. The light of the crystal dimmed slightly, its pulse slowing to a gentle rhythm. Ethan stood alone in the chamber, the weight of the being's words heavy on his mind. He had come to Orion Prime to survey minerals, but now he had unlocked a power far greater than anything he had ever imagined. The days that followed were a blur. Ethan returned to the camp, his mind racing with thoughts of the encounter in the subterranean chamber. He tried to go about his work as usual, but everything felt different. The world around him seemed more alive, more vibrant. He could sense the energy flowing through the ground beneath his feet, feel the rhythms of the planet as if they were a part of him. At first, he tried to ignore it, to push the sensations away and focus on his duties as the lead geologist. But as time passed, the connection to Orion Prime's energy became impossible to ignore. He found himself able to predict geological shifts before they happened, to sense disturbances in the rock formations miles away. It was as if the planet was speaking to him, guiding him. One evening, as Ethan stood on the ridge overlooking the camp, he felt the familiar surge of energy within him. The sky above was filled with stars, and for the first time, Ethan didn't just look at them in wonder, he felt them. He felt their distant pull, the vastness of the cosmos, and his place within it. The being's words echoed in his mind, "You have the potential to change the course of history." But how? He was just one man on a remote planet. What could he possibly do with such power? As the days turned into weeks, Ethan began to experiment with his newfound abilities. He discovered that he could manipulate the energy of the planet to stabilize unstable mining zones, prevent cave-ins, and even heal injured crewmates by channeling the planet's natural energy into their bodies. Word quickly spread among the crew, and soon Ethan was no longer just the lead geologist, he was something much more. A protector. A guide. As Ethan's reputation grew, so did the demands on his abilities. People began to look to him for guidance, not just on geological matters but on larger issues that affected the entire colony. He became a symbol of hope for the settlers of Orion Prime, someone who could solve problems that seemed impossible to overcome. But with this new role came a burden. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Ethan, and the more he used his powers, the more he began to realize how fragile the balance truly was. The energy he tapped into wasn't limitless, and each time he drew from it, he felt a subtle shift within the planet itself, as if the world was reacting to his influence. One day, as Ethan was working in the mines, a tremor shook the ground. It was small at first, but then it grew, sending workers scrambling for safety. Ethan immediately reached out with his mind, trying to calm the tremor as he had done so many times before. But this time, something was different. The energy felt chaotic, unbalanced. Sweat dripped down his face as he focused, but the tremors only intensified. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and for the first time, Ethan felt a surge of fear. He had never lost control like this before. "Ethan," one of the miners shouted, "what's happening?" "I don't know," Ethan muttered, his voice strained. "Something's wrong. It's not responding." The ground split open, and a deep rumble echoed through the cavern. Ethan could feel the energy beneath the surface, but it was wild, untamed, as if the planet itself was rebelling against him. He concentrated harder, pouring every ounce of his focus into stabilizing the ground. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the tremors stopped. The ground settled, the rumble faded, and the air grew still. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. "What was that?" a worker asked, his voice trembling. Ethan shook his head, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think I've pushed the planet too far." Ethan spent the following days in deep reflection, haunted by the tremors he had failed to control. He isolated himself from the crew, retreating into the quiet confines of his workshop. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. He had once embraced his newfound abilities, believing they would lead to great things, but now he was consumed by doubt. Had he inadvertently put everyone at risk? As he tinkered with old machinery, trying to distract himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of something monumental. The connection he felt with Orion Prime was more than just a scientific curiosity, it was a bond that tied him to the very essence of the planet. Yet, he had to learn to navigate that connection carefully, to respect the forces he was tampering with. One evening, while he was working late, Ethan felt a sudden pull, a familiar energy calling to him. He hesitated but knew he needed answers. He stepped outside, the twin suns casting long shadows as they dipped below the horizon, and made his way to the ridge where he had first encountered the being. As he climbed, the air grew thick with anticipation, and the stars began to twinkle overhead. When he reached the top, he was met by a shimmering figure, the being that had first bestowed him with his powers. It stood with an air of wisdom, its eyes glowing faintly. "You have come seeking answers," the being said, its voice resonating within Ethan's mind. "I need to understand," Ethan replied, urgency lacing his tone. "What happened in the mines? Why couldn't I control the energy?" The being stepped closer, its presence both calming and formidable. "The energies of this planet are not to be trifled with, Ethan. They are ancient and powerful, tied to the very fabric of Orion Prime. You must learn to harmonize with them, not impose your will upon them." Ethan nodded, processing the information. "How can I do that?" "You must open yourself to the whispers of the planet," the being instructed. "Listen to its rhythms. Feel its pulse. Only then can you truly harness the energy without disrupting the balance." Ethan felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. "But how do I start?" The being raised its hand, and a swirl of energy formed, illuminating the space around them. "Meditate. Connect with the energy around you. Allow it to guide you. Trust in the wisdom of Orion Prime." As the being spoke, Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He concentrated on the energy flowing through him, allowing it to envelop him like a warm embrace. The connection he felt with the planet intensified, and for the first time, he could hear it, a soft hum, a rhythm that pulsed beneath the surface. As Ethan embraced the energy surrounding him, he felt the gentle hum of Orion Prime guiding him, a rhythm that resonated deep within his soul. He visualized the energy flowing through the planet, connecting every rock, every grain of sand, and every living organism. It was a vast web of life, and he was a part of it. With each breath, Ethan felt more attuned to the world around him. He allowed the energy to wash over him, feeling it surge through his veins. He focused on the crystal, visualizing its pulsing light and its connection to the planet's core. As he concentrated, he began to sense the fluctuations of energy, the ebbs and flows that define the balance of Orion Prime. In this meditative state, Ethan glimpsed visions, fragments of the planet's past, its struggles, and triumphs. He saw ancient beings, powerful and wise, once thriving in harmony with the energies of their world. But he also witnessed chaos, moments when greed and desire disrupted that balance, leading to turmoil and destruction. The echoes of those past events lingered, a reminder of the fragility of existence. Ethan's mind raced with the implications. The power he had tapped into was not merely a tool, it was a living entity with its own history and struggles. He realized that if he was to wield this power responsibly, he needed to understand not just the mechanics of it, but also the emotional and spiritual aspects. As he opened his eyes, the being was still there, observing him with a knowing gaze. "You begin to understand," it said, its voice a melodic whisper. "The energy is more than a resource, it is a part of the planet's essence. You must respect it and learn from it." Ethan nodded, determination rising within him. "I want to help. I want to protect this place." "Then embrace your role," the being urged. "Use your abilities not only for yourself but for the greater good. The balance of Orion Prime depends on it." With newfound resolve, Ethan descended the ridge, eager to put his insights into practice. He felt empowered, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But he also understood that he would have to tread carefully, honoring the planet's energies as he explored the depths of his newfound abilities. The next day, Ethan awoke with a sense of purpose that invigorated him. He made his way to the mines, determined to apply his newfound understanding of Orion Prime's energy. The air was crisp, and the twin suns hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the camp. As he approached the mining site, he found his crew gathered, discussing the aftermath of the tremors. There was a palpable tension in the air, a mixture of fear and uncertainty. The workers had grown wary, unsure if the mines were safe. Ethan cleared his throat, stepping forward to address the crew. "I know the recent tremors have caused concern," he began, his voice steady. "But I've learned more about the energy of this planet. We can work together to prevent further disturbances." A murmur of skepticism rippled through the group. One of the miners, a burly man named Grant, crossed his arms. "You expect us to trust you after what happened? We're not ready to risk our lives because of some new age mumbo-jumbo." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the energy within him. "I understand your fear. But I'm not asking you to take a leap of faith. I want to show you what I've learned. We can harmonize with the planet's energy instead of fighting against it." With the crew reluctantly watching, Ethan focused on the energy flowing through the ground. He closed his eyes, channeling his connection to Orion Prime. He envisioned the vibrations of the Earth, the delicate balance between the various energy flows, and felt a surge of confidence. As he concentrated, the ground beneath their feet began to hum softly. Ethan opened his eyes and gestured to the Earth. "Feel it," he urged. "The energy is alive. If we listen, we can learn how to work with it." Slowly, the miners began to relax, curiosity replacing their skepticism. Ethan guided them in a series of breathing exercises, encouraging them to connect with the planet's rhythm. He could sense their apprehension melting away as they tuned into the vibrations of Orion Prime. After several minutes, Ethan could feel a shift in the atmosphere. The energy felt more stable, more cohesive. "Now, let's work together," he said, raising his hands. "I will guide the energy, and I need you to help me with the physical work." The miners nodded, and together, they began to dig cautiously. As they worked, Ethan focused on stabilizing the energy around them. The ground felt solid, the vibrations gentle and reassuring. With each passing hour, the atmosphere shifted from tension to camaraderie. The crew started to see Ethan not just as a geologist, but as a leader, a beacon of hope in their uncertain world. They laughed, shared stories, and gradually, their trust in Ethan began to grow. By the end of the day, they had made significant progress, reinforcing the mine's stability while harmonizing with the planet's energies. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the camp, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. He had taken the first step toward transforming fear into trust and had begun to unify the crew under a common purpose. As the days turned into weeks, the crew continued to adapt to their new way of working. The mines became a hub of activity, with Ethan guiding them through the balance of energies beneath the surface. They learned to respect the rhythms of Orion Prime, and their productivity soared. Ethan's leadership had transformed the team from a group of wary workers into a cohesive unit, united by purpose and newfound trust. But just as things began to stabilize, a new threat emerged. Ethan had been sensing disturbances in the energy flow, subtle yet alarming. Late one night, while examining data from the survey drones, he noticed irregular patterns, fluctuations that suggested an impending crisis. His instincts kicked in, and he rushed to the mines. When he arrived, he found the crew gathered around the main shaft, their faces pale with fear. The ground trembled slightly, and dark clouds were beginning to form above, casting an ominous shadow over the camp. "Ethan!" Grant shouted, panic in his voice. "The tremors are back. We need to get out of here." Ethan could feel the energy swirling chaotically beneath them. It was unlike anything he had experienced before, an angered force, as if the very essence of Orion Prime was reacting violently to an external disturbance. "We can't leave. We have to stabilize it," Ethan yelled, trying to keep his composure. He took a deep breath, focusing on the energy flowing through the ground. "Everyone, listen to me. We need to work together. Channel your energy into the ground. Trust in the planet." The crew hesitated but gradually nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They formed a circle around Ethan, focusing on their breathing and feeling the vibrations of the earth. As they connected with the energy, Ethan reached deeper into the planet's core, seeking to understand the source of the disturbance. He could feel a massive force building, something dark and powerful, threatening to break free. Ethan closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind. The energy surged within him, and for the first time, he felt the connection not just with Orion Prime, but with something else, an ancient power that had been awakened, stirred by their mining activities. "We have to redirect it," Ethan shouted, opening his eyes. "Focus on the energy flow. We can contain it." As they worked together, Ethan felt the strain of the energy overwhelming him. The ground shook violently, and he could hear the creaking of the mine structure. It was a race against time. With one final push, Ethan and the crew channeled their collective energy into the earth, creating a barrier that encircled the dark force. The vibrations intensified, and with a blinding flash of light, the energy erupted outward, dispersing into the atmosphere. When the dust settled, Ethan opened his eyes. The sky was clear, and the tension in the air had lifted. He looked around, seeing the crew exhausted but triumphant. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger for it. "We did it!" Grant exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Yes, we did. But we must remain vigilant. Orion Prime is alive, and it needs our respect and understanding." As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a warm light over the camp, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had forged a bond with the planet and with each other, a unity that would carry them forward into the unknown. The cosmos was vast, filled with wonders and dangers, and together, they were ready to face whatever came next.